is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome to another edition of That Football Show here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Matt Verderame. And we got to thank our sponsor, Holiday Distillery, Ben Holiday, Bottled and Bond Bourbon. Just met up with somebody, actually. Shout out to Nick. Met up with him, gave him a bottle of that delicious Ben Holiday, Bottled and Bond Bourbon. Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. As you can probably tell if you're watching this, I am not at my house. I am on vacation, and that is a wonderful thing. So for the next couple of weeks, I'm here. I'm enjoying my life. And then I come back, and football absolutely owns me for the rest of time.
That's how it goes. That's absolutely how it goes. I did want to, because last week, remember, we called for 5-star reviews. And we said if you shared a 5-star review and mentioned That Football Show, we would talk about it. We did it on the 21 Questions as well. And look, somebody did it. So shout out to Types92 for leaving us a 5-star review with the That Football Show. It says, "Let's go. When times are slow in the NFL, turn to a great show that covers the Chiefs and the rest of the NFL." Thanks, guys. So we appreciate you for your 5-star review as well. This one didn't directly mention us, and so maybe I shouldn't read it to incentivize people to talk about us more, but it's a good 5-star review for KCSN. It just says, "Love KCSN. This is from Ali B107. Great content. I love them all, but Only Wear Games is my favorite. Their camaraderie is the best, and I love their banter. Makes my day every time they release a podcast. Also miss Craig. Craig, come back." Don't we all? But I was going
to say we all miss Craig.
Right. I wanted to give those two 5-star reviews a shout out there. Thank you, Types92 and Ali B107 for your 5-star reviews. Again, if you mention That Football Show or leave us a glowing 5-star review, I'll read it right here on this here program. That's what we do here. But today, as Types92 mentioned, dead time of the NFL. So I was thinking outside the box a little creatively last night, Matt. 4th of July holiday coming up on us. First, got any big plans for the 4th of July holiday?
Kind of. So I am up at my family, my mom's side of the family. She's one of 5, and so they co-own a lake home, which is in theory a wonderful thing, and is a wonderful thing. Also, though, she's one of 5,
right?
So screaming is also a thing far more often than not. Would you like to paint the house? The hell you will. It's my house too. So it's kind of one of those deals. That being said, I'm up here for the next couple of weeks. And there will be, I'm sure, many, many people shooting off fireworks on July 4th. So I'll be watching that. Of course, though, in the state of New York, you can't actually shoot them off. So in theory, people are shooting them off. Right. It'll be good. I remember years ago I came up here, and when I was younger, like my early 20s, I used to buy a lot of fireworks and shoot them off of our raft.
Yeah. And
I remember one year, there may not have been a police presence that showed up at the lake, and everybody stopped shooting off alleged fireworks in question. And then one of the potential officers yelled out, "It's okay, we're just here to watch," and everybody just kept shooting. So, it'll be good. It'll be good. I'm looking forward to grilling and chilling and just watching the fireworks these days. What about yourself?
Yeah, I don't really do much of setting off anymore. I like to watch. Actually, heading out to the Royals game on Wednesday. They're doing a drone and fireworks show.
Wow,
they're doing
feels like a potential for disaster, but okay,
right? And I was like, I just kind of have to go to see what they mean. And drone shows, drone shows are cool, right? They're the modern fireworks shows. They'll do like a bald eagle. They'll make it look like an American flag, but they kind of take a little bit to like set up in between pictures, right? So I think what the thought process behind of like, okay, while these drones are going, we're just going to shoot off as many fireworks as we can is a great idea, truthfully, in theory.
In theory, yeah, I'm all for it. It's funny actually on the lake up here. There's been a one bald eagle that has nested up here forever.
Oh wow!
And so it's been, I mean, God, since I'm sure it's a different eagle over the course of time. But since I've been a kid, there's always been a big bald eagle up here. And every once in a while, I could see it go fishing, which is pretty interesting, pretty fun. And yesterday I was in the kayak, and I'm kayaking around, And all of a sudden, like all these smaller birds started making a ton of noise. So I'm like, what is going on? And I look up and this thing is above me. I mean, way above me, like 30 feet, 40 feet above me. But he's just screaming toward the lake. Like, that's going to be interesting for whatever fish that thing hits. Yeah. They are huge in person. Like, you really, like, you see them and you know they're big, and then you see them in person. In this case, again, I'm guessing it's probably about 30 feet from me. I mean, that thing was A, cooking, and B, like, a big bird. Very, very cool. Very cool. Especially, July 4th coming up or anything. So, yeah. I mean, look, that might be the most eventful thing let's hope it's the most eventful thing that happens this week. All I want to do is relax. I really, like, can the Chiefs not do anything this week, please, that ends up in the news? I just want 1 week. Just 1 week where I'm not being bothered by nonsense.
Yeah, that would be great. But knowing this team, knowing this organization,
it's not likely.
It's not likely. So when I was trying to think of things that we could talk about on this show, one of my favorite things to do around like this time of year is to like go to DraftKings Sportsbook and look at all of like the lines they have out, because they have so many lines out for so many different things. And I think about this time, we've done it a couple of years on different shows, but I think this show specifically, Matt, it'd be good to, I've sat down, I've listed out mainly all of the Chiefs over-unders, from like wins to passing yards, passing touchdowns, individual player stats, basically. I've also made note of some interesting NFL ones we can talk about later, but I want to start with the Chiefs ones, and we can go through these and just kind of have a discussion about these projected stat lines. I mean, Vegas does a pretty darn good job for this, truthfully. I don't know if they've got a bunch of like fortune tellers in there, a bunch of time travelers that come back and will tell them what the lines are going to be. But Vegas does a pretty darn good job at setting these lines. They're usually pretty accurate. So I want to go through and talk these lines out with you. And there's a couple of interesting ones here. First, let's start with over under Chiefs wins. We kind of had the conversation, I think it was last week, about like the Chiefs schedule, and we kind of talked through the schedule a little bit more on that episode. But the over-under that I found was 11.5 at DraftKings Sportsbook. I feel pretty confident in the over on that one. I don't know about you, Matt.
So here's my thing with this. So since Mahomes has been a starter, and a couple of those years were 16-game seasons.
Yep.
They've always gone over, except for last year, and they went 11-6, and they were a raging tire fire, and they still won 11 games.
Right.
They didn't even try to win their last game, and they won 11 games. Like, I look at the schedule, and we've talked a lot about the schedule, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this division is not good on paper. I know that's on paper. Things can change. We understand that. But like, when you're looking at the division sitting here in early July, I think it's a fair thing to say. With the caveat being the last game of the year, you never know because they can be shitting everybody.
For sure.
But if they're doing that, they're probably hitting the over. Like, 5-1 is like probably worst case in that division. Like, I don't see them losing to Denver. I just don't see any world where they're losing to Bo Nix in a game that matters. I don't see them losing to the Raiders after what happened on Christmas last year. If I had to have one prediction this year that I felt ironclad about, they're sweeping the Raiders. After all the crap the Raiders talked after that game, specifically the coach, like, Mahomes is going to eviscerate that team twice. So that really leaves the Chargers. They play him in December at home at night. Like, I feel pretty good about that game. So it's really like week 4 at the Chargers. Like, maybe that's one of those games that, like, kind of, whatever, you're 3-0. And, especially if they are 3-0, they beat the Bengals and the Ravens.
Yeah.
But I think, like, they're 5-1 at worst in the division. Then the NFC South, like, again, the worst case, probably 3-1. Like, worst case in that division. That's 8 wins. Like, if you even say, like, okay, you were to split the AFC North games, that's 10. Okay, the San Francisco game, okay, you're going to probably, I don't say probably. You could lose that game. And then you have, like, the Texans at home. It's at home, probably win. The Bills game, like, I mean, I think the worst case, like, they don't play well, they're beat up, is 11 wins. I think their more likely case is like 13 or 14 wins. So I would go over. I just think with that schedule, unless they lose every single difficult game, like, they're probably going over.
Right. And I think that's the conversation that I have with a lot of people. People ask me, like, hey, Three-peat this year? It's a great conversation starter in Kansas City, Matt. Like, people just say, like, hey, three-peat. That's all they'll say. Just if you need some small talk started. And that's the point I keep going back to is the schedule is that while, like, yeah, they do have that tough December stretch where they don't have, like, any rest at all. They do not play very hard teams for the most part because they are in the worst AFC division. They play the worst NFC division. And that stretch can include the Texans, which, again, like, we're anticipating the Texans to be good. We're anticipating C.J. Stroud to take a jump forward. We're anticipating a lot of the things with the Texans. Who knows if those actually come to fruition? That's for the season to play out and for us to find. But I think 11.5 wins is an easy hit for the over. I believe I went to Kansas and placed this bet actually because I felt really good about the 11.5 after our conversation last week about it. If you actually go to DraftKings Sportsbook right now, these lines close August 29th, by the way, all of the lines I'm talking about, so you can go take advantage of that. This is not sponsored by DraftKings, actually, by the way. I just enjoy their app and user experience. We've been sponsored by DraftKings before. This show specifically, not sponsored by them. But if you go there, you can choose from a bunch of different options of like over under wins. 11.5 is like the one that's like perfectly even on each side. You can pick if you think the Chiefs will win 14 games, you can put down money right now for plus 280 juice on that line. You can, if you think they'll win 16, you can put over 15.5. DraftKings will happily take your money for that. You can basically bet on whatever you want there, but I do think that 11.5 is kind of that sweet spot. And we talked about you kind of need 13 wins to get that one seed, and if they're going to get the one seed, I think that the over of 11.5 is kind of perfect there. So let's move on to individual stats here. Let's talk about Patrick Mahomes. His over-under for passing yards is 43.50. Last season, Patrick Mahomes threw for 41.83. The year before, pretty darn good year. 5,250 yards. Looking at the 43.50.5 number, Matt, it looks like he's passed that all years except 2019, 2023, and obviously 2017 when he only played a game. So a number that has been pretty reachable for him in years past.
So to me, this number is a great get in the sense that it feels like it is swung too low based on last year. Like, he's not just eclipsed that number in past years. He's destroyed it.
Correct.
Like, it's not even close. 5,100 yards, 47 plus, 48 plus, 52.50. Like, it's not even close. Not even close. Like, a down year for him. Okay, so if you actually do the math on this, all right? So he said, essentially, taking out that one game he played in 2017, right. He's thrown for 28,000 yards, give or take, actually a little bit more. Let's just say 28,000 yards. You divide that by 6. His average year is 4,667 yards passing. I'm going to take the over. They got Hollywood Brown. They brought in Xavier Worthy. They retained Harden for whatever that's worth to you. Rice obviously is a question mark. But they have Kelce, who you would think is healthier than a year ago. For me, yeah, I'll take the over on that. I think he will. I think he'll be around 4,600 yards.
I think it's a really good point about this kind of overcorrecting, right? Yep. Like I think that people saw last year again. Like, he did only throw for 4,100 yards, which is the second lowest total of his career. But it was an all as to take a word from you. Last year was a tire fire.
Tire fire, yes.
It was not good. So like if he's
won a Super Bowl,
it's insane.
The year was terrible. They still won.
I think Pat even said that in a press conference recently. He was like, "Yeah, like we still won somehow." I can't remember what press conference it was, what he was talking about. He's like, "Yeah, we were just like weren't on the same page, but we still won." And you're just like, "Yeah, that's true." Like you nailed it. But like 43.50 does seem like a really low line. I had to double check that a couple times, and even when you were talking again, I was like, "Wait, is that right?" Because that seems pretty low. That's what they have. The folks at DraftKings Sportsbook have down there as well. They also have Pat Mahomes passing touchdowns. Interesting to note, this is the highest passing touchdown total that they have for a quarterback right now on DraftKings Sportsbook at 34.5. Looking at his pass touchdowns. Now, last year, 27. Again, we might be seeing the same thing where it's kind of swinging too far low, because last year he only had 27, but the year before he had 41, 37, 38, 26, and obviously 50 in 2018. That seems like an easy, I think it's going to be close. 34 is a lot of touchdowns, but it seems like it's an easily reachable number for him.
See, I know I sound like a home right now. I promise I'll hit some others here, but like I would go, I think they don't run the ball into the end zone.
Correct.
That's my biggest rationale with this. Like, they're not a team that if they have first and goal at the 2, you're like, oh, it's going to power over. That's not what they do. They're not going to do that. They're going to throw like a push pass, a screen pass to Hardman, and he's going to run that's what's going to happen. And I've seen like fans of other teams bitch about that on Twitter. But he just vultures touchdowns. You know who else used to do that? Tom Brady.
Right. All
the time. First and goal at the 1. We'll throw a little quick pass to Edelman, like Gronk, when nobody can cover him because he's 8 feet tall, 400 pounds. Like that's what a lot of these teams with great quarterbacks do, because it's a good bet. It's a really good bet. You can get a foot and a half of space. It's over. It's touchdown. So, like, I think there's going to be a lot of times they're down inside the 3-4 yard line, they're going to throw it. You got Rice, he's huge. You got Kelce. Now you got the Skid Wiley, who led the league, led college football in touchdown catches for a tight end. Like, I don't think they're going to be bombs awaying the whole season at 40-plus yards a shot. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of times they're like, hey, you know what works here? A jet sweep, little push pass to Xavier Worthy, because nobody can run with him to the corner. Like, when they had Tyreek Hill, how many times would they do that? Where they would just and Hardman does it too, to his credit, like where they will just out-leverage you to one edge, good night. Nobody's catching that guy in a 5-yard span. So I think you're going to see a lot of touchdowns with them where they're just, little plays, little quick passes, and bam, it's a touchdown.
And I mentioned earlier, this was the highest line they had for a quarterback passing touchdowns, and it's not, frankly, that close, which I found to be pretty interesting. But
anybody not to be on the spot? Did they have anybody else over 30?
I'm going to look that real quick. I have it up right now. I'll do a quick little...
Yeah, I'll give you a second. So, like, last year, you look at last year's touchdown passing leaders, okay? It was a year where obviously nobody went crazy offensively in terms of, like, their numbers. I mean, Tua had 4,600 yards. He led the league. 4 guys had 30. In fact, here's a fun little guessing game. 4 guys had over 30 or more touchdown passes last year. Can you name them?
4 guys had 30 or more. Wasn't Patrick because Josh Allen?
No,
interesting.
Allen had 29.
Did Dak get up to 30?
Dak led the league with 36.
Okay. That makes sense.
Fun fact of these, they're all in the NFC.
Wow, that is that is interesting. Okay.
Because you think back to last year's MVP conversation, everybody was like, yeah, who the hell do we vote for? Because nobody had an awesome year. This kind of speaks to that.
I don't think Hurts got up there.
No, he did not. Hurts only threw for 23.
Stafford got hurt, right? So he wouldn't have been up there.
Stafford had 24.
Cousins got hurt. So Cousins wouldn't be up there.
So, I got you covered. So it's Prescott at 36, number 1.
Yeah.
Jordan Love at 32.
Golly.
Brock Purdy at 31. Jared Goff at 30. Mahomes finished 8th by himself with 27. Number 7, Baker Mayfield with 28. And Russell Wilson at number 9 with 26. That's who sandwiched Mahomes in touchdown passes. Okay? That's how you know it was down here. But, like, as much as we were like, yeah, Mahomes, numbers were big, he was 8th in touchdowns and 6th in passing yardage.
Right.
Like, he was 8th in QBR. He was great. Like, his quarterback rating was 14th, which was between Herbert and Stafford, ironically. Oh. But, like, the only number you looked at, like, yeah, he really was like his yards per attempt was like 7, which was tied with Ryan Tannehill. Okay. And it was behind Will Levis and Derek Carr. And that is a function of basically dropping back and going, I'll swing it out to the back. Sure, what the hell? At least they can catch the football.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like on the whole, still had a pretty good year. Did throw the 4th most picks in the league, although that was behind Hurts, Allen, and the immortal Sam Howell, who's now in Seattle. But yeah, I mean, just a weird, like, just such a bizarre year. Like, in every way, you look at those offensive numbers, you're like, man, it really must have been not very good. Like, no, they still won a Super Bowl.
Right.
The defense turned into the 85 Bears, so it was fine. In any event, so yeah, that's a little background on what last season looked like.
So looking at the over-unders, who's over 30? The only other person over 30 is Dak, and it's 30.5.
Okay.
For over-unders. Brock Purdy's at 28. Let me try to find Jordan Love here real quick, because he was another one that was up there in what you were telling me about there. Jordan Love is at 27, and Jared Goff and a half, obviously, is at 25.5. So a little falling down for those guys, but Dak at 30.5. Look, and then a line we'll talk about later. CeeDee Lamb has receiving touchdowns at 9.5. CeeDee Lamb gets a bulk of that offense, and he will be very interesting to see. Sounds like there's some not very good feelings from our friend Ricky from Twitter. Ricky, he says he is signaling some things that are not very good going down there in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb, but we'll talk about that later. Travis Kelce. Let's talk about Travis Kelce. This year, DraftKings has his over-under for receiving yards at 900.5 and his receiving touchdowns at 6.5. The highest receiving touchdown total on the Kansas City Chiefs, by the way. Thoughts on those?
So you have it 6.5?
Uh-huh.
It's hard, man, because I feel like we're getting to a point in Kelce's career where they're going to kind of try to be smart.
Yeah. Last year he had 5.
So since Mahomes became the starting quarterback, his totals are 10, 5, 11, 9, 12, 5. Like, on one hand, it stands to reason if I'm taking the over on Mahomes is 34.5, then it's like, well, you would take the over on Kelce. But on the other hand, they've got Rice, and they've got Worthy, and they've got Brown, and they've got these other tight ends, and they can throw to the backs. And, like, I think, look, here's my thought on this, I guess. My overarching thought. I think that their offense is going to be very good this year.
Yeah.
I think they're going to score a lot of points. I think what's going to happen this season is the offense, assuming Rice isn't gone for like the entire year or something, I think the offense is going to start a little slow if Rice is suspended. They're working Worthy in, and maybe Suamate is on left tackle. And then I think by about the 5th, 6th game of the year, their offense is going to absolutely explode. And they're going to have games where you're like, they're running up and down the field with like no issue whatsoever. I mean, people forget, as bad as they were by our standards last year, they were a top 10 offense in the NFL. Yeah. But they were still that, despite all their nonsense. I think what will also happen is the defense will be worse statistically because they're going to be trading time for points and time for yardage. And people are going to be, why do they rank 13th in yardage against? Well, because they're giving up 150 yards in the fourth quarter every week because they don't care. And they're just letting the team move down the field because they're up by 20. That said, you know what? I'll go under for this reason with Kelce. I just wonder if they're going to try to rein him back a little bit this year. And it's going to be, hey, man, we'll let Noah Gray have a few more touchdowns. We'll let Jared Wiley have a touchdown or two. We're gonna kind of pull back on your snap count, so to speak. I will say under. I'll say it's 5 again. I think I'll just tell, because the number was 6.5.
6.5 for
I'll say he has like 5 or 6. I'll say right under.
I think it's going to be close. I think if he has 6, that's a fine season. I think 6.5 is a very good line. Vegas is pretty good at that. I think 6.5 is a really good line for him. His receiving yards, on the other hand, at being 900.5. The last time he didn't get 900 yards in the season was 2015. So I'm going to hit the over on that. I know they want to dial him back a little bit.
I'm
I still
with you on that. I'd take the over on his yardage.
Yeah, I still think they want to get him. He's still a main part of that offense. So I find it hard to believe that the 1 year he doesn't get 1,000 yards, like, nope, bring it back to 900. Bring the over-under back to 900. I think that might be some easy money there. I doubt that there's any juice on the over, truthfully. For that one, I'll look here real quick, but Travis Kelce receiving yards has fed families. I think there's juice on the over. Oh my gosh! So if you go to DraftKings Sportsbook right now, it's plus 110 to put money on the over right now. So listeners of that football show could change the line. We could change Vegas's mind quickly if we all go and flood the over on the Travis Kelce receiving yards.
I would take the over on his yardage. I think if he's healthy, he'll hit 1,000 yards again. I think they'll just manage his way. I don't think he'll go way over like he has in the past, but I think he'll be somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100.
Yeah. I think it's very reasonable to say that. So let's talk about a couple more receivers. And I found this to be super interesting, Matt. I don't know. Maybe I'm off base here, but Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown have identical lines. And I found that to be very interesting in both receiving yards and touchdowns. Yes, I found that to be
very surprising.
Wildly interesting. 750 and a half, 4.5 receiving touchdowns.
Okay. This is the easiest one that we've done so far for me. I would take the under on Xavier Worthy's yardage. And look, if I'm wrong, that's awesome. Yeah. And I know there are people listening and watching this right now who are like, he's a hater. Look, I know Rice had almost 1,000 yards last year. You got to bear in mind, that was the exception to a very long-standing rule with Andy Reid, where rookie receivers with the Chiefs, that just doesn't happen. They had no choice last year because Tucker and I were the starting receivers on that team, okay? And if they were going to do anything in the playoffs and down the stretch, Andy finally came to realize, like, look, it just got to happen. Like, we've got to go to him and we've got to go to Travis and then run the football because the rest of his team is helpless. Like, that's essentially what happened. They are not in that position this year with Xavier Worthy. They have Rashee Rice. They have Hollywood Brown. They have Travis Kelce. Like, when the whole team is there, and you got to assume for at least a good chunk of the year they will be, he's the fourth option in the passing game. Like, inarguably, he's the fourth option in the passing game. And then you also have a guy like a Hardman, like Watson, who, yes, are not as good as you would hope as Xavier Worthy, but are going to get some targets. They're going to see the ball. Mahomes trusts those guys. Don't believe me? Go watch the Super Bowl. Like, they're going to see the ball sometimes. So, like, the Worthy one, I just don't see. Now, the touchdowns, you could argue. The touchdowns, I might take the over from this standpoint. I could see them very much, like I said earlier, getting into, like, these little short areas and being like, hey, we'll just throw a little push pass to Worthy because nobody can catch him.
Mm-hmm.
That one I could be swayed on. The yardage, if he goes over 750, the Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl going 17-0. Like, I just don't see it happening. Hollywood Brown, I would take the over on the yardage.
I agree. Yep.
Because to me, especially if Rice isn't there, he's the number one receiver on the team. Like with Rice, it's a 1A, 1B thing. Like you could argue which one's the number one guy. There are going to be some games Brown probably has like 25 yards. There are probably going to be some other games where Brown's 140 yards. Like I would take the over. I think Kelce's going to lead the team in yardage.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brown is a reasonably close. I think Brown's going to be a lot like Juju was, where he had like 9-something. And it was just also like if you go back and look at Juju, obviously the 1 year is there when they won the Super Bowl. His numbers that season: 78 catches, 933 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like I think that's about what you'll see. I mean, look. By the way, what was amazing about that year? He had 78 catches on 101 targets. If the ball was thrown at him, he pretty much caught the ball. Yeah, give me the over on the yardage. And what was the touchdowns? 4.5?
4.5. Yep.
I'll take the over on that. I think it's like 5 or 6.
So double over for Hollywood. I agree with you on the Hollywood. I think 750 is kind of like I saw that one. I thought it was too low. I think if you put it at the same. I think if you put it at 900.5. That would be a better line, truthfully.
Well, they're probably looking at it like, so his career as a rookie had 584 yards. Then he had 769, so he just went over. Then he had 1,008, way over. 709 just under. Last year, 574. But here's the thing about him. So in 2022, he had 709 yards. He played 12 games on a horrific Cardinals team. Like, he easily catches 1,000 yards there. Now, again, the one thing with him, he's had a couple injuries. Nothing huge. He's never, missed a ton of time, but he's played 14 games in a 16-game season. 16 games in a 16-game season. 16 in a 17, and then 12 and 14 in the last 2 years. But, he's been on teams that either don't throw the ball or are god-awful. So, I just think if he plays 15 games for the Chiefs this year,
yeah,
he's hitting the over on those. I mean, Mahomes by himself is enough of a floor raiser that I think he goes 800, 900 yards.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by those two identical lines. Last time the Chiefs had two 1,000-yard receivers, or two 1,000-yard pass catchers, I should say.
Well, got it. Kelce and Hill, right? In
2021. Yep, 2021. That was the last time. The last time I had two 1,000-yard wide receivers, couldn't tell you.
Oh my God.
Maybe never.
Watkins never did it, right?
No, I don't think so. I'll keep going back in my my Pro Football Reference team page.
Jimmy Watkins,
so.
Close 673. What a weird career that guy had.
Just bizarre.
I mean, when Bo was there, nobody else was doing it. Macklin did it 1 year, but they didn't have Hill wasn't who he was yet.
Right.
Oh my God. Have they ever had two 1,000-yard receivers?
Their history of wide receivers is not rich.
Oh my God. Nobody did it in the 90s, I can tell you that much.
It's not been done in the modern era, I don't think.
The only year I'm pretty sure they've never had it happen. The only year I'm gonna look this up now because now I'm annoyed by it.
I can't. Yeah,
I think in 1983, Bill Kenny threw for 1 million yards for them, and they might have done it that season. I'm gonna look it up right now. I know this is making for dynamite airwaves. Carlos Carson had 1351. Henry Marshall had 788. So the answer to that question is no. Yeah, I'm pretty sure nobody's ever done it, man, in the history of the team.
That's crazy to think about. That is actually crazy to think about. I'll keep looking at it once we get done with this podcast.
You want a fun little note? This is a July 3rd type of note, but so I as you know, and maybe some of our listeners know, and I'm not trying to pimp it or anything out here, but I have my own podcast I do on Patreon.
Yeah.
Okay. And every Monday I do a history lesson about the Chiefs. And a couple weeks ago, I did the 1986 Chiefs because from 1971, when they lost that famous Christmas Day game to the Dolphins, until 1990, they made the playoffs one time. And it was 1986. And I stumbled on this accidentally, but this is one of the most mind-blowing. This will never happen again in NFL history. So they made the playoffs essentially because they had maybe the greatest special teams unit of all time. Literally, no joke. Maybe I think they scored 8 touchdowns that year on block kicks and stuff. And they were defensively. Offensively, this is unfathomable now with who they have on this team. They did not have a quarterback throw for 2,000 yards. Okay. They didn't have a running back run for 450 yards. And they didn't have a receiver go for 900 yards. And they made the playoffs. That'll never happen again in NFL. Never. Quarterback not throwing for 2,000 yards, a running back not going for 450, a receiver not going for 900. And they made the playoffs. And if you're how in God's name did they do that? They went 10-6 that year. And the last game of the year they had to win the game in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh stunk to make the playoffs. Here's all you need to know about that team. They won 24-19. They were outgained in that game 515 to 171. They scored 3 touchdowns on special teams. That's how they won that game. So, if you need to have a little renewed appreciation for what you're watching right now, go back and look at the 1986 Chiefs, who somehow were the best team they had for almost 20 years. That was the oasis in the desert, was that team.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I had to bring that up because we're talking about over-unders. And I looked at those numbers for about 10 minutes when I was preparing that show. And I'm like, how is that? Are you serious?
Right.
And I went on YouTube and there's like a 1986 Chiefs yearbook thing and I watched it and everybody's like, yeah, the offense was terrible and they still won. Brutal.
Just like the Chiefs last year, but to a different degree.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a break here. I've got more that I want to talk about, and even on the offensive side of the ball, we have Isaiah Pacheco rushing yards, and we'll get to the defensive side of the ball. There's some awards too that some Chiefs players are in. We can talk about the value there. I don't know if we'll have time for the NFL stats. Maybe we have to make that another show in a couple of weeks where we talk about NFL over-unders. We'll play it by ear. You know, we that's what we'll do. But we're going to take a break now. We'll be back. We'll finish up the Chiefs over-unders.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Matt, I'm all the way back to 2010 now, and I cannot find a season.
So I'm telling you right now, you can give up the hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, so the only other year I could think of is people, by the way, are just like, I'm sure, just thrilled to death.
Yeah, right.
2003. They went 13-3 with that crazy great offense. And here's a fun thing. Nobody had 1,000 yards on that team.
Wow.
Including Tony Gonzalez.
See, okay, so that was my other thought process. Was like, okay, maybe it happened with Tony Gonzalez, but Tony Gonzalez is not a wide receiver. I really don't think it's ever happened. I don't
Eddie
think it's ever
Kenson at 853 and Johnny Morton had 740. And Priest Holmes at 690.
Damn. That's a lot for a running back.
Man was cooking. I mean, they just, oh my God, man. All those great offenses in that time period. And I thought we had it. I thought we found it, but we don't. So in 2004, Tony Gonzalez had 1258, Eddie Kennison had 1086, Johnny Morton at 795.
Oh.
The dream is truly dead at this point.
I really don't think it ever happened. We'll keep looking, but I want to ask you about Isaiah Pacheco. Look, there's been a big topic about the running back room as a whole. It looks like he's the sole guy back there. And hopefully he doesn't punch anybody in the face at the end of any games this year, because
they're going to need him.
They have Clyde, but again, they don't really have anybody back there besides Isaiah Pacheco and a couple of guys who haven't really played at NFL level before. But he is over-under for rushing yards 875.5, rushing touchdowns 6.5. Thoughts on those lines?
All right, again, they don't run the ball a lot down in the red zone.
Correct.
Or down in the red zone, I should say. I'll take the under on the touchdowns. 875, I think, is a good number.
Let me see here. Yeah, he had 830 his rookie year, 935 last year. He had 5 touchdowns his rookie year, 7 touchdowns last year.
I'm gonna take the under for one reason. Because he runs like Earl Campbell.
Yeah.
And that always makes me concerned that he's going to miss like a month of the season.
Right.
If he stays if you said to me he's going to play, let's say, 16 games, I'd pick the over. Because I think he's going to get the lion's share of the carries. Mm-hmm. I also think there's a world here where Clyde's getting like 200 carries this year because they're just like, you know what? We're going to save you for January. We've talked about this on the show. Like he and the rest of that team, they've played a lot of extra games.
Yeah.
I really wonder this season if the coaching staff is going to be very judicious about, hey, man, why don't you maybe only get 8 carries in this game? Because we're playing the Broncos, and we don't need you to have 23 carries. Like, hey, Clyde, maybe you play the Panthers game and you get 25 carries. Like, we're good. Like, I'm going to take the under because I worry about him staying healthy for a whole year, and I think that if they can, they're going to be very judicious in the way that he plays.
I agree. I think the Vegas, again, has done a really good job of setting this line. I mean, just like look at his 2 totals between his 2 years, 830 and 935, like putting it at 875.5. That's a good yardage line right there. The touchdowns line, again, is a very good one at 6.5. His 2 totals of 5 and 7, like that falls right in the middle there. If you expect him to kind of have a year that not quite as good as last year, but better than his rookie year, it's going to be really close to there. But I do think I'm with you about like running back is such a hard position because like there's so much attrition there. He played 17 games his rookie year. He played 14 last year. So that's a big drop off of games played. And look, he is healthy coming into the season. That's good. I know he had like a little shoulder thing coming into last season. He basically had the non-contact jersey on all through training camp. Maybe they should do that again with him just because, like, hey, maybe not. Well, let's not go to any contact with you, Isaiah. Let's save you here during training camp. Keep you from yourself because we know he likes to go full throttle. But I do think that it's going to be I can't imagine him playing. Look, I think if he plays 14 games this year, I would say that's good because like I just anticipate running backs missing a lot of time. That's personally what I think. I mean, you look back, and this is a stat I've tried to keep up with. I should go back and do it for last year's running backs, but starting running backs across the NFL miss an average of like 3 games a season.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing to factor into, especially all of these rushing props and everything. That I think Christian McCaffrey's probably an exception to the norm. He's just kind of, but
he's been hurt a lot too in his career.
He has been, yes. And the position is just hard. The position is so hard to just stay healthy and to be consistently productive in. So I don't think that the under is necessarily an indictment on him as it is.
If you told me he's going to play 16, 17 games, I'd take the over on it.
Absolutely.
It's like, at what point is he like, hey, man, his shoulder's barking. He needs 2 weeks. He rolled an ankle. He needs a week. Like, yeah, the guy runs like he's 280 pounds. Like, it's going to happen. Like, at some point. By the way, to go back to our never-ending bit in this show, can you name the receiver in 2000 for the Chiefs that had 1,391 yards?
Oh, my gosh. 2000. That's a blind.
They sucked. They went 7-9. Gunther Cunningham was their coach. Rest in peace. Tony Gonzalez had 1,203 that year. They had a receiver who had 1,391. And by the way, bonus fact, Sylvester Morris had 678 yards. Who's the receiver who had 1,391 yards, 10 touchdowns, and somehow didn't make the Pro Bowl?
Holy cow. I don't know. 2000's a blind year for me. I don't know.
Derek Alexander.
Wow. Derek Alexander.
Derek Alexander just went absolutely big boy that year. By the way, somehow had 3 years of over 1,000 yards in his career. And had another year of 992 for the Chiefs.
Oh, well.
No idea. No idea how the hell it happened. But it happened. Know that it happened. Accept it into your life that it happened.
I think when you get to sorry to talk go back to our bit, not actually what we're actually talking about in the show. I think there's a certain year that you get to, you're like, okay, there's not going to be multiple 1,000-yard receivers just because of the game, you know?
Right. That's why I thought of that one random year in the 80s. Right, Bill Kenny just turned into Joe Montana that season. Right. Is it possible? No, there's no way. I've looked through all the meaningful years at this point, and I feel very confident saying it's never happened.
Never been done.
Like, because in like the 80s, like Stephon Page was like, he was a good receiver, didn't have anybody else really. Like, they just,
right.
That's not, now obviously they've had a bunch of years, they've had 2 guys catch for 1,000 yards, receive 1,000 yards. They've had great tight ends.
Uh-huh.
But never 2 receivers. I mean, God, it might happen this year. It could happen.
It really could. And
it could.
That's why we bring it up. Okay, let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Chris Jones sacks. So we know Chris Jones is very vocal about his sack number.
Man says 20.
He says 20. Vegas says 10.75 for his sack total. Last year, I think he tied his season high or his career high with 15.5. Over under, Matt, 10 3/4 of a sack.
Big number. By the way, happy birthday to Chris Jones. Turns 30 today.
Yes, he did.
I think he's one of those guys, like he's kind of just like, you take the over. And you know, to be fair to him, he's been very durable in his career. And he just, he's also one of those guys, like, you take the under and then you watch a game and he has 5 sacks in the game and you're like, oh my God. Like, you take the over and you just assume, like, he's going to have a stretch where he's 8 games and, like, 9 sacks in those 8 games. And then it's like, the rest of the year feels like 4. He's clearly without a issue. I would take the over on Chris Jones. I would. I don't think he's going to get to 20, but I think he'll have between, like, 12 and 14. Like, he's an all-time great player. So.
My years were off. He had 15.5 in 2022. Last year he had 10.5 in 16 games. Now he did play the last game of the season to get that incentive for 10.5. But
He also didn't play the first game, as we all remember.
Right.
I covered that game. I was at that game. That was one of the more interesting games I've ever covered.
Gosh, what a wild year it was last year. Just so much. Sticking on the defensive side of the ball with the sack total, George Karlaftis 9.5 sacks, or 9.25, I should say. Do you anticipate him to get 9.5 sacks?
Well, my bold prediction this year is that they're going to lead the NFL in sacks. They've been, which is not all that bold because they've been second each of the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to have over 60 sacks this team. So I'm going to go over in the sense. I think they're going to have monster years up front.
Last year, George did have 10.5. Year before, he had 6. I do think 9.25 is a very reachable number. I think 9.5 is a very reachable number for George in that regard. I like the over as well. On George sacks, just the way he's progressed too has been nice from these last 2 years. I anticipate to see more growth from him as well. So that's all they had defensively for the Chiefs. I went to look at interceptions, and they didn't have Trey McDuffie on interceptions. They didn't have Nick Bolton on total tackles. I thought that was kind of bizarre.
I was going to say, I would have thought they would have Bolton.
But no, those were the only Chiefs players on, like, the interceptions one. I'll pull it up right now. The interceptions one was
fact with McDuffie. You know how many career interceptions he has?
He has 1, right?
0.
Oh.
He's never picked off a pass. But he forced 5 fumbles last year.
That makes sense because his ball skills aren't, like, the best.
But it's just crazy. Like, he's a first-team All-Pro. Like, no one argues the fact that he's definitely worthy of that. He had 80 tackles, 3 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 9 quarterback hits. I bet you I could find, like, decent defensive linemen who didn't have 9 quarterback hits last year.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, the way that they utilize him was insane.
It's ridiculous.
Looking at the interceptions one, it is just rookies. It's just Cooper DeJean, Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Quinyon Mitchell. The combined tackles, again, still am kind of shocked. I'm double-checking again that I didn't miss Nick Bolton, but I don't think the Command F feature would miss Nick Bolton. No Nick Bolton on here. Seems kind of crazy. Pat Queen is at 125.5, so we can kind of use that for... They have that for a lot of guys, actually, now that I'm looking at it. It's 125.5. Do you think Nick Bolton gets over 125 tackles?
A couple of years ago, at 180.
Right. Yeah, he did.
I'm going to say no, because I think Tranquil's going to play a lot as well. And I wonder if they will take... It's hard with that, man, because, like, I'm always the guy who's like... By the way, shout out Kansas City Scouts. I'm always the guy who on third down is screaming, like, get him off the field and play somebody who can run. But the Chiefs are like, absolutely not. He stays. And so I feel almost dumb, like, saying that he's not going to have 125 tackles, because it feels like, are those, I'm assuming, combined tackles?
Yes, combined tackles. So his rookie year, he had 112. He obviously had 180 that one year and 60 last year. He missed half the season.
I feel kind of stupid saying no, but you know what? All right, that is. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say he does, because they're not going to take him off the field. Like, when he's out there, if you look at his snap counts, in 2022, he played 98% of the snaps.
Right.
And last year, he played 87% in the games he was in. Like, I'll say, yeah. I'll say he does it. I'll say he gets like 130, 135 tackles, yeah.
Last year, if he did play, like if you pace it out, he played 8 games last year. He would have been there last year.
I'll say he does it. It feels stupid to be like, no, he's going to be on the field every play. And he's the middle linebacker.
Right.
So if he's healthy, I would say he does it.
I think that's good. Right now, looking at some awards, Mahomes first for MVP odds at 450. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. But I think the one interesting one is Chris Jones plus 3,000 for Defensive Player of the Year. That's 10th. Do you think he makes a run for Defensive Player of the Year?
You could. I would put $20 on those odds over Mahomes just because of the value.
Right.
Like, here's the thing that's hard with Mahomes. He's already won 2 of them. And he's won 3 Super Bowl MVPs. And, like, whether or not it should be the case, there's a real thing that's called, like, voter fatigue. Just
yes.
It's a real thing. I, for the record, am not a voter. Maybe one day at some point, although I'm fine not being one because then I don't get screamed at. Look, it is a real thing that people are just like, this guy again. Yeah. This guy again. Why do you think Michael Jordan didn't win 12 of them? Like, right. There's a reason.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember when they named Karl Malone the MVP, and I was like, are you serious? He's a very good player, but come on now. And then Jordan proceeded to just eviscerate him in the finals. Like, if it's Mahomes, like, let's say Mahomes has a great year. Let's say Mahomes throws for 4,600 yards and 39 touchdowns, and the Chiefs are 13-4, and they're the 1 seed. But let's also then say, like, Josh Allen elevates what is a pretty mediocre receiving core on that team, and he puts up numbers that are maybe like 5 to 10% worse. He's probably going to win.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be like, well, he's never won one, and they don't ever receive. That's the other thing that hurts Mahomes. People just look at the Chiefs as just a full-blown juggernaut because they're a dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to be so much better than everybody else. Like, I have all the respect in the world for Jalen Hurts. I think he's an excellent player. Jalen Hurts should not even have been sniffing that MVP that year, statistically speaking. Well, it's over 5,200 yards. But, like, oh, well, yeah, but, then you get all these, like, arguments. I would take Jones more as the defensive MVP. I would not go with anybody on the Chiefs being the Rookie of the Year. The only way that's interesting to me is if Worthy's that returner on this team and he just goes berserk as a returner.
Yeah.
But I would not touch that. I usually, especially in a year like this, you'll look at the top 10, it's like Marvin Harrison Jr., Mike Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams. Like, it's a tough year to be the offensive Rookie of the Year for Xavier Worthy.
I'm looking at the offensive Rookie of the Year right now. It's Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Marvin Harrison Jr. at plus 700. Like, I'm looking at that. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr. at plus 700 seems like pretty darn good value there. I mess around with that one. I don't know if I see Worthy on this list. Let me do. Oh, he's plus 1,800 for Rookie of the Year, which makes him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th, tied for 6th in terms of odds. Truthfully, higher than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, same. I think people see a receiver with Mahomes, they're like, that guy.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the people that bet on that guy, or that bet on Xavier Worthy, are going to be absolutely furious when the Chiefs are just giving Justin Watson 45 snaps a game the first 8 weeks of the year. Put him in there, and it's just going to be, no, it's all right, never mind, we've got McCall Hard.
Yeah.
And then like the back half of the year, he'll start to really perform. People will be, where the hell was he? I remember texting somebody with the Chiefs. It was probably like right around the Eagles game, the regular season last year. And I texted somebody in the building, and I was like, why is Rashee Rice in mothballs other than like 8 plays a game? They're like, just wait. It's coming, but we don't want to overload him. And right after, like a week later, was the week like he went off. So like, let me go back and check if it was the Eagles game or whatever. But it was like, ever at the end of the year, I texted the same person. What the hell? Like, this guy, like, was incredible. Like, didn't want to overload him, but it was definitely tempting.
Yeah.
I feel like the only way that Worthy has just a massive year is if Rice is suspended for a big bulk of it.
I agree.
And they feel like they don't have a choice, and he's just unbelievable around the game. But like the better odds are just that they kind of slow play it. That's what they do.
That is what they do indeed. I didn't put down Coach of the Year odds because Andy Reid's probably never going to win a Coach of the Year ever again because, again,
that's one feed.
Yeah, narrative-based award.
Yeah.
Matt Eberflus right now is leader in the clubhouse. Golly. Mizzou made.
By the way, Matt Eberflus, good guy. I always like talking to Matt Eberflus. Also, good name. I'm trying to think if there's like a guy like is there? We can I guess close it on this. Although you're running the ship, so I should.
No, you're good.
Is there any coach that you're like that's the guy I'm looking at that's like a dark horse for this? And why is it Sean Payton?
Oh gosh.
You imagine?
D'Amico Ryans actually has pretty good odds at plus 1100.
What are Harbaugh's odds?
900. He's second. Which makes sense. Robert Saleh, same odds as D'Amico Ryans. I don't think that's going to happen.
Stop it. The Jets, I can't.
Yeah. You said Sean Payton. Let me find Sean Payton here. He's plus 3,000.
That seems right. I'll give you two guys. One's a little bit of a dark horse. One's like the horse is so dark you can't see it. Shane Steichen for the Colts.
I like that.
Right, dark horse, because if they make the playoffs,
plus 1,600 right now
or something.
Yeah.
The other one, and this is like a real dark horse, unbelievably dark horse. Jonathan Gannon with the Cardinals. Like if Murray's healthy, and maybe the Rams take a step back if like Donald's absence kills that defense, and Stafford, he starts showing his age or gets hurt or whatever. Like the Cardinals don't even have to win the division, obviously, right? If the Cardinals somehow make the playoffs, Gannon's going to get serious shine. And this is coming from someone who made fun of that hire for a month straight. Okay,
yeah.
I know they went 4-13. I actually thought he did a pretty good job at that team last year.
Yeah.
They were competitive. They had no quarterback for most. I mean, they were starting Clayton Tune.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They just drafted 12 guys. And a lot of them on defense, but they also drafted Marvin Harrison. They've got Trey McBride. They've got Michael Wilson. Like, that's a team that, like, there's a world where you're watching them. You're like, they're pretty fun. They're actually not terrible. Like, look, I don't think they're going to be good. I think they're probably like a 6-11 team. But could it shake out where, like, things break right for him? Yeah. So, like, Gannon's odds are probably astronomical, but I would throw him in as, like, the darkest of horses.
Well, what if I told you that Jonathan Gannon's odds would help if I was looking at the right tab, comeback player of the year, are actually better than Shane Steichen's.
Really?
Yeah, plus 1,500 for Jonathan Gannon, plus 1,600 for Shane Steichen.
Peyton's double what Jonathan Gannon is.
Yes.
That's awesome. Wow. So I would take Steichen.
Yeah, I think that's really
blows up this year. And he's awesome, and they win that division.
Yeah.
And for people, well, they're not going to win the division. Nobody thought Houston was winning the division last year either.
Yes.
Like the Colts were a couple plays away from winning that division last year with nobody playing quarterback. If it's Gardner Minshew, but like, come on now. I could see a world where the Colts go, 10-7, 11-6, win that division, and Steichen gets so yeah. Put me down for Steichen as my kind of dark horse pick, if you will.
I like it. I like it a lot. I was looking at comeback player, and I saw Aaron Rodgers at the top, and I just kind of rolled my eyes. But also at the top, Joe Burrow, plus 250. I think that's probably a pretty safe bet, but I like Anthony Richardson at plus 600.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I like that. I'm with you on that.
I'm a big Anthony Richardson guy. Was when he was coming out. I like how he plays the game. They didn't use him very well at Florida, I didn't think. And I got excited when he went to the Colts because I was like, that's kind of a fun team for him to go to. Then he got hurt because he can't decide. He's much like Isaiah Pacheco, where he's like, I'm just going to run you over. He's like, you can't do that because you're a quarterback and you need to be healthy. And he just like wants to run people over. But he also wants to throw a ball 5,000 yards in the air. He's very fun to watch. And I hope we get a healthy season of Anthony Richardson and I want people to also see how fun he is to watch.
He's fat. I have a couple buddies who went to the University of Florida who watched him quite a bit. And they're like, this guy is unrefined in the sense that like he, between college and the pros, or excuse me, between college and high school, didn't throw 1,000 passes.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. But when you watch him, you're like, my God, man, that kid. And here's the thing about Shane Steichen I find fascinating. So Steichen, obviously now the head coach in Indianapolis, before he got there, he worked for the Chargers originally as a defensive assistant. and then worked his way up. And he was the quarterback's coach for the Chargers when Justin Herbert showed up and had one of the all-time rookie seasons. Then went to Philadelphia and helped Jalen Hurts become an all-pro.
Yep.
Like, if there was anybody I want coaching my quarterback, like, he's in the top 5. By the way, kudos to the Chargers. We're like, that's fine. We have Brendan Staley. Get out. So, nice job by them. But Steichen, I also got to spend some time at Colts camp last year. I spent some time around them. He's a nice guy. I think players enjoy being coached by him. He does not take any bullshit. Like, I watched them. It was like the third day maybe, and I was that of camp. And somebody ran the wrong route, and he went ballistic about details. And Brandon, I was like, this guy's either going to wear everybody out by August, or like, this guy's going to be a really good coach. And then you watch the rest of the practice, and he wasn't like that the whole practice. So, like, it was like he kept it under control. And, like, Andy Reid can be like that sometimes, where Andy's, like, really a player's coach and mild-mannered and supportive. And then, like, at some point, Andy just goes berserk. Right. Like, and you're like, okay, Andy's had enough. And then sometimes Travis Kelce just runs over Andy Reid in the Super Bowl. And we all forget about it because they won the game, or it's one of the most replayed things of all time.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I think Shane Steichen's a really damn good coach. I think Richardson's going to benefit a ton from having him as his coach.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, we're over the hour mark here on That Football Show. First time I think we've done that. Who would have thought it would have been on July 3rd would be the first time we do that. But, Matt, appreciate you kind of predicting this Chiefs season with me. Loose terms on predictions, because we're not predicting a whole lot. We're just talking about the over-unders in this. But appreciate you. Any final thoughts before we go?
Well, next week we may not have a show, correct?
Correct, yes.
Because I'm in a place where I want to have service at that point, and then you're out of town.
Yep.
So the next time you see our faces, it's going to be July 17th, and the Chiefs will be like, so rookies and quarterbacks will be in camp.
Yeah, that's true.
What is this song? Looks like we made it. Like, that's how I feel at this point. So, thank you everybody for sticking around and hanging out during the offseason. Because look, there is a 2-month period where there is not a whole hell of a lot to talk about. Although the Chiefs have unfortunately given us quite a bit for some of this offseason. But yeah, quiet on all fronts right now, but not for long.
Love to see it. I'll be up at training camp a lot of the days. So make sure, if you're up to training camp, make sure to hit me up at Tucker D. Franklin. I will love to meet up with anybody. And also leave a 5-star rating and review. We'll read it on not next week's show, but the week after that. Next time we're back, I'll read it. So make sure you mention That Football Show wherever you listen to your podcast. We will go check those out. So for Matt Verderame, I'm Tucker Franklin. We will catch you guys next time on That Football Show.